Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my LinkedIn Lives. I'm Jasmine Navarro, certified wellbeing expert. And as you, I've forgotten my line myself. Helping educational institutions and companies support their family wellbeing challenges. And as you know, every week I interview different experts who make a difference. And today I'm super excited to be interviewing George. Thank you, George, for coming on. It's so great to have you here.
Honestly, I'm delighted to be here.
No, it's amazing. And I love the topic. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, sure. So I actually work for a British company, the Fry Group, and I'm a chartered financial planner. So, in easy terminology, that just means I look at your short, medium, and long-term financial goals, and we
Yeah.
put in place a plan of action to make sure that you fulfill those dreams, if you like. Otherwise, if you don't have a plan, it's unlikely to actually happen. So,
Wow.
simplistically, that's what I do.
Wow. That sounds so important. Very excited to talk to you today. And you chose this title, Proactive Financial Wellbeing. Can you tell us what that means and why you chose that for today?
Absolutely. So I'm really passionate about your financial well-being because that can come in different forms. It can mean different things to different people. So it's really having your short, medium, and long-term goals aligned. And if I just give you some examples just to
Yeah.
kind of like illustrate this,
Yeah.
it could be a family member that you need to have a financial conversation with, but having the open discussions means that everything is clear on what your expectations are. And if you don't have the discussions, your mind can play havoc with you and you
Yeah.
start imagining things that aren't real. So I'll give you an example. I was with someone yesterday and she opened up to me. I said I was coming on this talk today and I actually asked her permission to talk about it, even though I'm not going to name her.
Yeah.
Um, and she said to me, so I've always been the breadwinner, and my husband, they got a little baby that's about a year old. And she said, I've always been the breadwinner, I've always earned more money. And now suddenly my husband is earning more money than me. And I got really upset. And I said to him, he was like, I don't understand why you're so upset. What's the problem? And she's like, well, because I've always earned more money, I've just assumed that you were with me because of my money. And he was like, oh my God, no, I'm here because I love you and I want to be with you. And so the realization of that brought all this emotion, and she couldn't stop crying because all this time she's been thinking that in her mind. And so
Wow.
by having that open conversation and really emotionally letting go and just saying, I'm feeling like this. Now that you're running more than me, I'm not liking it, and explaining why, it meant that she is now feeling incredible about herself because she now
Wow.
knows that her husband loves her for being her as opposed to it all being about the money. So, that's just one example. I speak to loads of people all the time where they're having difficult situations, and I'm like, well, have you spoken to the person that you need to speak to? And they're like, well, I don't really know how to bring up the subject. And being
Yeah.
British is probably one of the most difficult things because we're really reserved, aren't we? And we don't
Yes.
share things
Yes.
easily.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And no, that's really interesting. And it's funny because normally most things like we talk about on here, most problems come from not talking about things. Yeah. Like you said, you just build things up in your head, you imagine things, don't you? So that's really interesting that this is like the thing that you just mentioned as well about this. But, and money can be really uncomfortable, maybe for British
It's
people,
a
or I don't know.
honestly, it's a taboo subject. So,
It is.
I get parents that they're not sure how to open up conversations about, inheritance and when they pass away, or they might want to gift money now, and they're like, well, I don't want to have the conversation. The children are going to me, well, I don't want to have the conversation because I don't want my parents to think that I want all their money. And the
Yeah.
parents are like, but I want to know that everything's going to be organized when I die. And
Oh,
I'm just like, well, just have a conversation. Like, I'm sure you're both feeling the same. And what's unbelievable about having a really open conversation is
yeah.
at the end of it, you go, wow, I've been feeling exactly the same. And then it
Exactly.
took one of you to open up, and then the other one opens up, and that's invariably what happens.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say then. So what kind of problems do people, I guess it's not always problems, but what kind of things do people come to you
So it
about?
might be that you're starting to move in, you're moving in with somebody, so you're starting a relationship very early days. It's a big step to move in together. One of you might earn more than the other, as an example, and you're not quite sure how to split the finances. So you're not sure how to approach the conversation. And even if you're buying a property, it doesn't matter if you own different percentages because you're putting more deposit than the other person. That's fine. That's all in the
Okay.
open. But then how you deal with your day-to-day bills, because one of you earns more, it's like,
Yeah,
okay, do I pay 70% of the bills and you pay 30% because that's roughly what the difference is? Or do I have treats separately for you and I take us on a nice holiday? Do we have like we call it a budget account? So you jointly send the same amount of money in, or you're differing amounts if that's what you've agreed on, then all the household bills go out of there. But the stress and the amount of arguments that are caused from money, by having the open conversations, will really, really help your financial well-being.
oh yeah, no, definitely. No, well, yeah, again, it's about communication. And what do you do though? For example, that couple that might have come to you and said, we're buying a house together. How do you help them? Do you tell them what to do, or do you like ask them questions? Like, how does it work?
I ask them questions and they come to their own conclusions, because everything is unique to their own position. And you can't, I can say, listen, there's an idea, I think you should consider this. And these are your options. So I lay all the options out on the
Okay.
table, and then it's up to them to decide, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Oh, we could do it that way. Oh, how do you feel about that? Oh, that really works. And then you come to a compromise. Invariably, there's a compromise, isn't there? It's not, no one's going to go, oh yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, so you sort of give them the space and the information, and then they can figure it out. That's amazing because, you know, I didn't even know. Well, of course, I knew that people like experts like you existed, but I've never really thought about it. Oh, asking somebody else for, help in
I
that
think
area.
it's I
Yeah.
think because it's such a taboo subject, people
Is
don't
that what?
talk about it. But what happens with me is that people open up to me because I'm asking
Yeah.
openly, well, what are your short, medium, and long term goals? Well, you know, I want to do this in the short term. It might be, I don't know, you want to education fees, you want your children to go to the best private school because you didn't have that as you grew up. So therefore you're saving towards that. And then you might want to retire early, or you might want to do lots of traveling when you retire. So that's really important to have enough money so that when you retire, you can have the lifestyle that you want and you're not going to run out of money. So
Yeah.
we spend time doing, we call it a cash flow model, to basically plot, okay, well, you want to retire at this stage, or you need this much for your education for your children. How many children are you going to have? What's that going to cost? And then we work it back to say, well, this is how much you need to save in order to achieve that. But
Okay.
it's having really open, like everybody has to be transparent, because I can't
Yeah.
give the best advice to my clients unless they are completely transparent. And a lot of people say, well, I've never thought about that. I say, what age would you like to retire at? Well, I don't really know. I've never really thought about it. I'm like, okay, well, can you go away and think about that? And then let's talk about it. Do you see yourself working because you're an entrepreneur and you're probably never going to stop working, which is unique to entrepreneurs? Or are you really enjoying your job being employed, but eventually you see yourself having your own business? How can we make that happen? It's all about having a plan to make it
Wow.
happen.
It's so just, I'm learning so much just by you speaking to me, because I think it can be so easy just, and of course, like everything you're saying is kind of how I work with coaching, but it's just a completely different topic, especially with goal setting. You work backwards, you set the goals and all of that. But I've never, ever, I know that sounds crazy, especially because I work for myself, but I've never really set these financial goals properly. I'm always like, I don't know, hoping, or just, oh yeah, that will figure itself out or something. Never really, because I think it's an area that it's not my comfort zone at all. So I just sort of avoid it. It's
So that's like most people. I've got to tell you,
Really?
most people are in exactly the same boat as you. They've never given it thought. They bumble
Yeah.
along, and then eventually they're suddenly like, if you were retiring in 5 years' time, your retirement would be a really big priority to you. But 5 years from retirement, it's no good coming to me and saying, I've done nothing for retirement. Can you
Yeah.
help me? I'm not going to be able to do very much. If you
Yeah.
come to me 25, 30 years earlier and say, okay, I've got excess money, I'm not spending it all. It's easy to get carried away with the lifestyle here in Dubai. And
Yes.
before you know it, at the end of the month, you're like, oh, I've spent all my money. I'm not quite sure where it went, but I've spent it all. Whereas
Yes.
if your salary comes in and immediately you should save 20% of your salary,
Is
believe
that
it
what
or
it
not.
is?
Yeah,
20%.
for your short, medium, and long term goals. That's not just for retirement. That's generally speaking for your future. If you save, I don't know, say 1,000 dirham a month into a savings, and you're expecting in retirement to then get, I don't know, 500,000 dirhams a year, it's never going to happen. Your money can't grow that much to achieve that. But yet people do that all the time, and
Yeah.
it astounds me that people don't have an understanding. But now over the years, I've realized that it's just an education thing. We were never taught this at school.
Yes.
So therefore, we're just out in the big wide world. Suddenly you've got bills to pay. You've got credit card offers on every phone call that comes to you. Every day you
Yeah.
get a new phone call. Would you like a new credit card?
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to admit it. In my 20s, I thought it was free money. I didn't realize. I knew it had to be paid back. I didn't
Yeah.
realize the consequences of paying it back and the
And
interest you'd get
interest.
charged. And if you have a credit card and you pay the minimum payment every month, it will take, and you don't spend any more. Let's say you've racked up, I don't know, 30,000 dirhams, and then you
Yeah.
pay minimum payment every month. It will take you 5 to 10 years to repay the whole balance because of all the interest that's being charged. And that's assuming you don't spend another penny.
Wow, that's scary. And that's like exactly what you said, education. Like and sometimes because like obviously I've got a credit card here, and I remember ages ago when I was teaching, I just thought, oh, I'll withdraw some cash. And I was charged so much. And I kept getting charged every month. And I was like, why do I keep getting charged? And they're like, because I don't know, you need to pay it. I don't know what I needed to do. And I said, let me do it right now then, please. I didn't know because I just assumed it was like in the UK, and there was something different, and I kept being charged. And I was like, what? This is crazy. So I think you've got to, yeah, like you said, being educated, and you've got to find out, haven't you? Because it's not just given to you the information. Because I know a lot of people here as well, well, probably here many places, but definitely here, who've come here and they've gone home in debt.
Oh, we see it all the time. It's especially during COVID, it was really
Really?
awful. And we'd have phone calls saying, I'm worried about paying tax on my income before I go back to the UK on the money that I've earned here. And I've lost my job. Obviously, a lot of people sadly lost their jobs over COVID. And it
Yeah.
was a really difficult time, and it was really emotional because you were trying to help these people in a way, but you couldn't help them.
Oh,
And I
like it was
think
too late, you mean?
it's too late.
Oh,
It's really tricky, and we all know now that there are bans on flying if you owe money, and also your home country, they can seek money from your home country, which never used to be a thing. So there's no really getting away with it. So it's really just taking control. And I know there might be a lot of people out there that are in this whole, they haven't got enough money coming in every month for their outgoings because they've got
yeah.
themselves in debt.
Yes.
And I would say to those people, reach out to me and we'll get a plan in place. You can go to the creditors and say to them, right, I owe you money, but I don't have enough money coming in. They are sympathetic, and they will come to a deal where they just say, right, you pay me back this amount every month. And then you'll feel a lot better because you've shared it. Because believe it or
Yes.
not, sharing it's like a problem
Yeah. Relief.
halved when you share
Yes.
it.
Yes.
It makes a huge difference. And then
Yeah.
if you have a plan, but you have to stick to the plan. So when you're out in the sales and you're shopping, just buy what you absolutely have to have, you need, not that you want. So, we all do it in the supermarket, especially back in the UK, 3 for the price of 2. I don't normally eat those, but it's 3 for the price of 2. So I'm going to get them.
And they throw it away anyway.
Honestly, I've learned so much, and now, especially with climate change and everything, I hate waste. It's a massive thing for me. So the freezer is fantastic. You can freeze most things, so you don't have to wait for them to go out of date. But it's all about budgeting. We all love going to Waitrose and Spinney's shopping, but it's unrealistic to do all your shopping there. It's so expensive. So go to a cheaper shop for your laundry goods, your day-to-day things, and just get special things from the cheap. It's always the cheap things, isn't it? It's always the chocolate and the cakes for me. That's when I go to Waitrose and that kind of thing. So it's
right.
It's talking to somebody, opening up. And that's why I talk about your financial well-being, because what happens is if you're worrying and you're stressed, you then have sleepless nights, then you become ill. And if you're not talking to anybody, it can be a really, really big problem.
Oh, God. And then you're probably going to make worse decisions as well, because you're not feeling right. And you might end up spending just to escape and just do something to distract yourself. And then you spend more money. And then you just go into that vicious circle, don't you?
You go into a vicious circle, and getting a personal loan to repay credit cards is much better, because you know the time frame. It's a much lower interest rate. You're repaying the capital and the interest every month, and but the trick is then to cut your card up and never spend on that credit card again.
Exactly. Cut it up. You've got to make that decision, haven't you? But no, it's so interesting. And there's so many things I want to ask you. So what would you say then? So what's the first thing somebody should do? Because maybe not everybody could afford to talk to somebody like you. Not everybody has that access, especially if they're in debt. Maybe they think I can't spend anything else.
I mean, the first thing I'd say is my door is always open. Regardless of your finances, I would rather help somebody, and that's the mantra that we have at the Fry Group, is that we try and help as many people as possible, even if they don't fit our criteria for investment.
Wow, that's amazing.
We have the expertise to be able to help you. We might not have the right answer for you, but as I said earlier, we can lay all the options out on the table for you to make an informed decision and work out what's right for you and your family and your situation. And just by having that conversation is the first step you're going to take. And then after that, it's being resolute that you want to resolve your financial issues and that you don't deviate from the plan. Emergencies happen, of course. My car's broken down. I didn't realize it was going to break down. It's going to cost me 5,000 dirhams that I wasn't expecting. But the idea is that once you've repaid your debt, or while you're repaying your debt, you start saving on the side and you have an emergency fund. Your emergency fund should be 3 to 6 months worth of outgoings. So if an emergency happens, you've got the backup there ready. And you're not using your credit cards, you're not getting in more debt, you've got the backup. And then after that, you start looking at your longer term plan. Okay, so I want to save for the future. I want to buy a house. It could be as simple as buying a house. That's going to cost me a lot of money. How do I start? So you just, every time you get paid, you send that money off while you're repaying your debt, or your debt might be a priority depending on how bad your situation is. So there is lots of help out there. And honestly, I would be happy to talk to anyone that feels that they're completely overwhelmed with debt. January is a really, really difficult month for a lot of people. We're all celebrating Christmas and New Year, but a lot of people, it's a really sad time and a difficult time. And financially, I think they did a campaign in the UK, didn't they, where everyone's to get a Christmas present, and for all the children, regardless of backgrounds. And I just thought, what a lovely idea, because a lot of people can't even put food on the table, let alone buy a present for their children. So it kind of like brings you back to earth.
It doesn't. It does. And also Christmas, probably so many families get into debt as well, don't they? Because they want to make it a Christmas, even though and you see it. I've seen it, like even with people I know, they spend a fortune, like more than what they can probably afford, and then January, they're going to be really unhappy paying it off, and it's just like, it's not worth it, is it? This instant, just to get something instant, something go without.
The expectation when I was a child, I mean, my mum was quite brutal with us. There were 3 of us, but she was bringing us up on her own, and we had 3 presents, and one we were allowed to open when we woke up in the morning, and then we had to wait for the Queen's speech before we opened the other 2, and that was the only presents that we got. And they weren't, one was a big present, which might be a pair of trainers, for example, that we really wanted, or a dress or something like that, but they were normal things that you wanted anyway, if that makes sense. Whereas nowadays, I think some generations are, okay, well, I didn't have that as a child, so I want to give that to my child. But the damage that you're doing is that kids just think it comes on tap. They don't understand that it's got to be earned in order to fund it. And then the lack of education in schools in terms of, and they are getting much better, but just how to budget. And there are cards out there now for children to have their own money. So you put their pocket money on there, and then they budget their spending according to what they can afford. And I really encourage people to do that, because then children start to understand, okay, well, I've got this much. Oh, if I save my pocket money next week, I can afford to buy that present that I want to buy myself, or that, that whatever it might be, I don't know, a computer game or something like that. So it just helps them get into budgeting generally, which is going to help them in later life.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And learn as soon as possible as well. Like, what do you think about, because what I've been doing for years actually, is I just write down, I handwrite loads of things. Like I do my journaling, I write down what I eat, and I also write down what I spend every day. I just do it.
Incredible.
I remember, because then, like, I always keep the receipts, and at the end of the day or the next day, I just write, okay, I've spent that. And so many times I find receipts, even though it's from the same day, and I've forgotten that I've actually bought that. And I'm like, oh my God, I forgot I spent that there and that there and da-da-da. It just helps me keep aware, but it's not really a great system, but it just keeps me aware. I don't know what to do. What would be the next level then on that?
So, I mean, you're way ahead of most people. I mean, you're probably 1% of the population that do that. Literally, hardly anyone does that. But I was actually talking to a couple of weeks ago, and what I suggested to them was they have their credit card and they use it to spend every month, but they do pay it off every month. So if you're going to have a credit card, that is the only way to use it, is that you pay it off every month, and then you reap the rewards, whether it's Skywards for your Emirates flights or cash back. Some of them do. Like, there are loads of benefits you can get, but the important thing is you must repay the whole balance every month. So I suggested to them, okay, well, you're just willy-nilly spending. You've got no control over your money. So let's put some control in there. So when you get paid, what we're going to do is transfer an amount of money that is your spending money only to your credit card. And then because we get a text every time you spend on our credit card or our debit card for that matter. So you can see exactly what your balance is. So rather than using a credit facility, you're crediting your credit card with that amount, and when you get to zero, you're not allowed to spend any more. And you have to be robust in that, obviously. And then also, when you get paid, we're going to set up savings accounts separately, that the money goes out immediately to those savings accounts, and you're not allowed to touch it. It's no, oh, I got a bit short this month, I'm a week before payday, I'm going to transfer some money so I've got some money to spend. If you want to fulfill your future dreams, unless an absolute emergency erupts, which obviously can from time to time, but generally speaking, it's just having that plan in place and it happening automatically.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. It's like the same with most things, isn't it? It's about spending that time before planning, which people probably don't want to do, but facing it then, doing the boring stuff, and then you're okay then. It's even with food, it's the same, isn't it? If you want to eat healthy, maybe you have to plan and cook what you're going to prepare in advance. It seems to be the same for everything.
What's the
Yeah,
saying? You are what you eat. I remember that.
yeah,
Remember
me
those
too.
two pages, like you are what you eat. I was like, yeah, that's so true.
I totally remember that saying as well. My mum used to always say it to me. But no, but that's really interesting, George. No, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I think, yeah, budgeting, being aware, planning. So, and these are simple things that we could do by ourselves then. But I love what you said about, yeah, putting spending money. So just having, so dividing it into spending, saving. So, you've thought about it before. You're not just going to see how the month goes. Because, of course, if you do that, you're going to spend it all and you're not even going to realize. Because, like I say, most days I forget what I've spent just in one day.
It's so easy. Like I always check
Yeah.
my statement, and there are
Yeah.
times when I look back and I say, what was that transaction? Normally they're quite big
Exactly.
transactions because they
Yeah.
stand out. And I'm like, how could I
Okay.
not remember? And then
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
suddenly comes back to me. But sometimes the name of the shop isn't the actual name of the shop, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
trade
Yeah.
as something else, and you're racking your
Yes.
brains trying to think who it is. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I remember now, that was that. And it's always good to check your statement and make sure that there are no transactions that you don't
Yes.
recognize.
Yes. And even when you go to the supermarket, check your receipt. Because a few times I've been charged more than I should have. Um, yeah, it's about being alert, isn't it?
It's
Just not
being
letting it.
alert. The
Yeah,
difference, the trouble is, if you had the cash in your purse and you were giving that cash over, that feels completely different to just
yes,
using Apple Pay and going boom, boom, boom all day. Yeah, no problem, no problem. You get the cash out, you can see it diminishing, and then you
yeah,
go, oh, right, I've only got 1,000 dirhams left in my purse. That's all I've got to spend. The trouble is with cards is it just feels like
it's never
infinity.
ending. Yeah, 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 yeah. And they've said that, haven't they? There's science behind it that spending on a credit card, you're more likely to spend more because it doesn't feel real.
It doesn't feel
But
real. And especially when you're moving country for the first time, getting used to dirhams. I've been here 4 years now, and I still convert back to sterling just
do
in my
you?
head to understand how much it is.
Yeah.
And so I'm always checking myself. And now I have the guts at the till to go, oh no, I'm really sorry, that's too expensive. I'm going to
Oh,
put that back.
brilliant.
I'm not
Yeah,
going to
that's
buy
another
it.
thing.
But
Yeah.
that's the other thing, is that most people are too scared, and I certainly used to be too scared to do that kind of thing. But now I'm just like, no, I'm sorry, that's just too expensive.
That's brilliant because you feel shame. It's the embarrassment again and feeling uncomfortable. It's like, oh
It's
no.
the investment, honestly. It's like,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. In the UK and in Asda, I was back home in November. Quality Street is my thing at Christmas. I love to
Oh
have
yeah.
Quality Street on Christmas Day. £4 a tin. Here, 87 dirhams for a tin. Just like, it's the
No.
same job.
Wow. Sometimes I
Honestly,
forget. I
it's
forget
it's
to
mad.
convert. So, and that's worse because then I forget about the pounds. So then I'm just used to the dirhams. And then I think, wow. Yeah. Yeah. You can get carried away. Like you said, you can get very carried away with treats.
You really can. It's amazing how it happens. But when I was young, I started work at Lloyd's Bank in the UK, and the best advice I was ever given was from my manager at the time, and you were able to save and buy shares in the bank. And he
Wow.
said it doesn't matter how much you start with. And I just remember starting with £20 a month, which seemed like a lot of money to me at the time. And then he said, but then the next one comes out and you start another one. And then before you know it, you can save up to the maximum of £250 a month. And eventually I got there. And if I hadn't have saved that money, a lot of my
Yeah.
wealth come from that. So
Wow.
I would
Oh,
encourage
saving.
everyone,
Yeah.
just you need to save. Otherwise, you got no future. You can't carry on
Exactly.
working for the rest of your life until you pop your clogs.
And that's brilliant advice. And even like you said, you don't have to save because people say, I can't afford to save. But even if you can even save £10 a month, anything, like save anything.
Starts at something, and then
Yes,
before you
yes.
know it, it builds up. And I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that with
yeah.
my friends. I've got two girlfriends. We go away every year together, and we save a certain amount every month in order,
That's
for
brilliant.
that future.
That's brilliant. I love it. Thank you so much, George. Is there anything else before we go, and how can people find you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, George Howard. I'm a chartered financial planner, qualified in the UK. So find me on LinkedIn. I'm honestly, if you want to message me, if you want to meet me, have a call, I'm really happy to talk about your finances. I'm very passionate about financial literacy and financial well-being in particular. So honestly, even if you think it's a silly question, it's never a silly question, because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, George. I've learned loads. It's been super, super helpful. For everybody else who's watching, please, if you have any questions or comments, write, you can message George directly or write a comment in the post. And thank you so much, George. And I will see everybody next week.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care. Bye.